It's Skype time again. This time we're finding out what to do when schools don't follow Title IX.
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Thanks so much for contacting Public Justice today. I understand you've started a gender equity club in your high school, which is great, and that you have some questions about how your school is handling reports of sexual assault.
Yeah, we do. There's a lot of sexual harassment at our school. A girl was sexually assaulted by another student in a music practice room. Her parents asked the principal what he was going to do about it. He said they were still investigating, but it's already been several months, and the principal hasn't told the family when the investigation will be finished. Do you see any problem?
Yes, I see two problems, one involving the length of the investigation and the other involving communication with the family. Under Title IX, schools are required to conduct a prompt and thorough investigation, and generally they should complete their investigation within 60 days. And this is true even if there's an ongoing criminal investigation. Schools can't delay until the criminal investigation is over. Under Title IX, schools are also supposed to give students and their families periodic updates on the status of the investigation. It sounds like this isn't happening.
The girl who was sexually assaulted is missing a lot of school. Shouldn't the school be doing something to help her while it's investigating?
Absolutely. While schools are investigating, they have to provide victims with reasonable accommodations, free of charge, to make sure that victims can continue their education and other school activities in a safe environment. And schools have to let victims know what accommodations are available, such as free mental health counseling and other health services, academic tutoring, and help from victims' advocates. So let's say the victim's family ends up paying for an outside therapist or a tutor. The school should reimburse the family for these expenses. Schools may also have to accommodate victims by taking steps to separate the victims from the students who assaulted them.
The girl assaulted in the music room definitely doesn't want to see her attacker, but they see each other in the hallways a lot and have some classes together. The school hasn't done anything to prevent this, so the girl often avoids coming to school. Shouldn't our school be doing more to separate them?
Yes. Title IX requires schools to take steps to make sure that victims can continue their education in a safe environment. For example, to make sure that the girl isn't confronted by her attacker in common areas like the hallways and cafeteria, her school could create a safety plan that includes increased supervision and security while she's at school or attending school events. Also, the girl shouldn't have to continue taking classes with her attacker. The school should change the students' course schedules to fix this. I really want to emphasize here that Title IX requires schools to minimize the disruption to the victims. So schools shouldn't make victims change their course schedules. Schools should change the harasser schedules and move them to different classes.
Our school is small. Often there's only one class on a subject, so moving the harasser to a different class isn't a real option. What should our school do?
Your school can have the harasser take the shared class online instead. And another option is to move the harasser to a different school within the district or move the victim to another school if that's what the victim prefers. The bottom line here is that Title IX requires schools to try to put the burden of these changes on the harasser rather than the victim. And in cases of severe sexual harassment, such as a rape, victims may also want to get a protection order from a court that prohibits the attacker from having contact with the victim in or out of school. The school would then be required to enforce that no contact order at school and school-related activities. Students who are sexually assaulted shouldn't have to leave their school to feel safe.
Another girl at our school was raped by a football player during a party at a friend's house. She told the principal, but he said there's nothing he can do because the rape didn't happen at school. Is that right?
No, your principal's wrong. When a student reports a sexual assault that happened off school grounds, schools can't just ignore it. Title IX requires schools to evaluate whether the off-campus violence is having a negative impact on the victim's learning environment at school. Most of the time, the violence does adversely affect victims, particularly if victims regularly see their attackers at school. Another problem that often comes up is that after a student is raped off campus, the attacker and his friends harass the victim at school. Title IX doesn't allow schools to ignore this either. Schools have a responsibility to protect victims from ongoing harassment that disrupts their education. And this is true even if the school ultimately determines that there isn't enough evidence to find that the victim was raped. If the victim is harassed for reporting a rape, the school must take steps to stop that harassment.
A boy at our school was raped and stopped coming to school because no one investigated his report or did anything to make sure he felt safe at school. What can victims like him do?
Victims have quite a few options for trying to get their schools to do a better job of addressing sexual assault complaints. One is that they can complain to the school district. Sometimes a district will take action when an individual school fails to do so. Some school districts have a district-level Title IX coordinator or another official who oversees the Title IX coordinators at each school. Also, Title IX requires schools to publish clear instructions on how, where, and with whom to file a Title IX complaint, as well as how to appeal a decision. So victims and their families should review those instructions very carefully. In my experience, many schools and districts don't have clear instructions on filing a complaint about sexual assault. In those cases, it's likely that victims won't get the help they need from the school district and will have to consider other options.
What other options?
The victim's family can file a Title IX complaint with the United States Department of Education's Office for Civil Rights, commonly known as OCR. OCR has regional offices throughout the country, and OCR has a complaint form that you can complete and submit online. No lawyers needed to do that. After you submit a complaint, OCR decides whether to investigate your school based on the information you provide. If OCR decides to investigate, it'll gather information from the victim and the school and will often try to work out a resolution with the school district. Sometimes this results in changes to the school's policies and procedures for addressing gender violence, new training and education programs, and reimbursement for expenses the victim's family paid to address the impact that the sexual assault had on the victim. But this process can take a while, often longer than a year.
Are there any other options?
Yes, victims and their families can seek legal advice. Now, not everybody can afford to hire an attorney, but there are some victims' rights groups that provide legal representation for free or at reduced rates. You can find information on some of these groups at the Stop Sexual Assault in Schools website at ssais.org.
A girl at our school reported that she was sexually assaulted. Then the school ended up suspending her for having sexual contact at school. Basically, the school blamed her for sexual activity that was actually an assault. Isn't that wrong?
Your instinct is really good. Schools shouldn't punish students who report that they were sexually assaulted. When schools do this, they make students feel like they can't safely report sexual assaults. Also, when a school punishes a student who reports a sexual assault, the school may be violating Title IX. Students who report sexual assaults are protected under Title IX, and schools can't punish them for reporting. That's called retaliation. The victim can challenge the school's punishment, in this case a suspension, under the district's process for disputing school discipline. This often involves a disciplinary hearing at the school to start, but families can usually appeal the school's decision to the district. And if they're unhappy with the result at the district level, they can often appeal to the State Board of Education. Again, your school should have clear instructions on how, where, and with whom to file an appeal. Also, it may help victims and their families to have an attorney represent them throughout this process.
Some of our friends have experienced dating violence. If they tell their school that they're being abused by a student they're dating, does the school have to do something?
Yes, schools shouldn't ignore reports about student-on-student dating violence. Dating violence often raises issues under Title IX that schools have to address. Title IX requires schools to address students' reports of sexual violence, period. This is true when the victim is abused by a student the victim is dating, a student the victim is friends with, or a student the victim didn't even know before the sexual assault. Now, in some cases, dating violence may not involve sexual abuse. For example, the violence might involve a beating or emotional abuse. So let's say a student tells the principal that her boyfriend is beating her and that she's afraid to be in school with him. Even though she hasn't reported sexual violence, the school still needs to take action under Title IX. This is because the school is obligated to determine whether the physical abuse this girl is suffering is gender-based. In many circumstances, there's a gender component to dating violence of this kind, and Title IX would apply.
What are some ways we can improve the environment at our school so we can stop dealing with all this sexual harassment?
Creating a gender equality club is a great step in helping to improve the environment at your school. You can also connect with other school clubs and your school's parent-teacher organization to share what your club is doing. And you may even want to collaborate with them on projects to raise awareness of students' Title IX rights.
We can definitely use these ideas. Thanks for Skyping.
Sure. If you have any other questions down the road, just let me know. This is really important work that you're doing.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.